Alright, so once again, it's been a little bit since my last video. A lot has been going on. You may have noticed on my Instagram, I bought a new car, and I actually moved out of my parents' house. So, been a lot going on here. Got a nice place set up. Gonna be a lot of fun. Be able to do a lot of stuff with cars, with roommates and stuff, and have friends over. We got lots of room in the driveway, and we got a garage full of tools and stuff. Now, you also may notice there's something over here. This is a 4.6 liter Ford modular V8, which happens to be the same as what's in the Mustang already, except this engine has a bit of a problem. Real quick, this car only has 47,000 miles on it. It's super, super nice. This thing is mint. It's almost like new. Busy street. It's a little bit loud out here. But it has a knock. It did not start knocking until after I bought it. I do not think the previous owner had anything to do with it. I did drain the oil, and it was low on oil, which the dipsticks on these cars are funky. They're kind of spirally, and they make things look weird on the level on the stick. So, for all intents and purposes, I could not tell that oil level was low until after I drained it. It was just a weird situation. I still got a good enough deal on the car that I was comfortable with purchasing a new engine, and I'm going to be doing that. We'll see how far I can get today. I'm out of town tomorrow and work the rest of the week, so we'll see exactly how long it takes. But the advantage being that this is such a new kind of condition car, there's not like any nasty leaks and grease everywhere to get dirty on, be slipping around on. There's no, seized exhaust bolts that you have to deal with because, the car isn't all that old. It is 17 years old, but it hasn't been on the road that much, and it's in just such good shape. So this will definitely be the biggest project I've done in a while, possibly since I did the transmission and suspension on the Nova. But that was before I ever started doing videos, of course. Otherwise, you guys would have seen it. So this is just a quick intro. I'll see if I can film some stuff over the next day, matter of days. We'll see how long it takes exactly. Time is kind of the essence, so I'm not going to be putting as much of a priority on showing every single thing, but I am going to be trying to show what I can, and hopefully get this new engine in there, broken in and ready to go. So I'm going to get started on this. We'll see if any friends come by to help. But yeah, let's get going. Alright, so I got a little bit already started here. I was just going to give you guys a quick rundown of the system I'm using to do all this. One quick thing is that as I've got everything kind of staged out here in terms of most of the tools I'll need. Most of them are going to be wrenches and ratchets, a lot of, just a few socket sizes really. I have an 8 and a 10 over there. Later Fords and most modern cars, I don't even know if there's any modern cars that still use standard. Most modern cars use metric for all the fasteners on the car pretty much. So I'm pretty much only going to be using the metric. That's why I got my metric wrenches out here. I got my 8 and 10 mil, like I said. I've got a couple Ziploc bag sizes. These gallon size probably going to be for things like if there's brackets I need to keep track of, like an alternator bracket or power steering bracket or something like that I want to keep paired with its bolts. I'll put the bolts in the bag and put the bracket in the bag as well. For other bolts and such, I got the smaller size. I've got masking tape and Sharpie. That's very important. You can see I've been labeling my harness as I'm going along. Passenger side cam sensor, the engine coolant temp sensor, throttle position sensor. I've got a couple connectors off the intake. One of the main harness plugged down here. As I'm going along, I've got things that I'm going to be laying things out so that I only want to take apart what I absolutely need to get the engine out. But I also don't want to overlook anything that might break on the way out. So really got to think anything that's crossing over from the chassis to the engine, connectors, wires, hoses, vacuum lines, fuel line, big one. Be very careful when dealing with fuel lines. Already got the battery disconnected. That's pretty much your first step when dealing with something this big, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of electrical connectors and such. You don't want to be grounding out some random wire that you don't know how you did it or what, but all of a sudden the fuel pump turns on, or something wild like that, you know, God forbid, while you have the fuel line wide open, and then, you know, if the battery's on, something could spark. So always disconnect the battery first. That is your first step. Then go along and start. I took the intake off, the air filter and all that, and the intake tube off first to give myself the most room to start doing stuff. That's one big simple thing. It was basically one hose clamp, one little bolt down here, whole thing pops off. And then I'm going along and just starting to take off what I can, starting with the engine harness. Eventually I'm going to have to get the heater hoses, a couple more harness things that I can eventually take the harness and just kind of fold it out and just have it off to the side of it. I don't have to take it out of the car. I just have to disconnect it so I have enough room to work with. Got throttle and cruise control cables disconnected, and they're held out of the way here. I will eventually get down to the exhaust collectors. I will have to deal with power steering and AC lines. My plan, hopefully, will be to disconnect the accessory, take off the belt and disconnect the accessories, so the AC pump, or the AC compressor, the power steering pump, and pretty much leave those as is, just unbolted from the engine, taken off the belt, and then that way I won't have to deal with discharging the AC. Hopefully that will work. I may have to take the radiator out. I will have to take the reservoir out. And hopefully that will give me enough room to be able to take this out. I am going to attempt to get it out with the transmission on it. That's what most people say works the best. And when it gets to that, I will be taking the hood off. That is another big thing. Obviously, you know, you're not gonna do this with the hood on. There's just no way. So I'm gonna keep plodding along here and keep going on it. All right, so I made a bit more progress. I got pretty much all the engine harness disconnected and labeled. Got the throttle body off, had to disconnect the EGR. Those are some bigger bolts that, if you're doing this kind of an engine yourself, maybe keep an eye out for. Heater hoses, got them disconnected, and a trick that you can do is use some Ziploc bags and some zip ties to keep the coolant from dripping out there. It looks a little bit funky because the baggies are filling up with what's dripping out, so they're kind of sitting here filled. Once they're done dripping a bit, I think I'll switch those bags out for some dry ones so that I don't have these bags of coolant hanging about when I'm trying to get the engine out and back in. But literally only a few drips, so what I did was, you know, took the clamps off, and then right before I pulled the hose off, I had the baggie in my hand, ready to go on there, so it didn't drip anywhere. And that was probably the easiest heater hose, you know, removal I've had of the few that I've done. Otherwise, this is going to spray coolant, and you know, you got to have a bucket ready to go underneath. But it also could cause issues because, at least on this car, the exhaust pipe is like right down there, and the bell housing and stuff. And you just don't want coolant everywhere, you know, and it's not good for the environment, it's not good for you, it's not good for your car when it's all dirty. This car is very clean, I'd like to keep it that way. I did notice a few little things as I was pulling things out. You know, some of the vacuum lines are getting a little old and dry. Maybe might want to make a list of stuff I'll replace in the future, just to keep everything nice and fresh. But so far, things have been going well. Hoping to get some extra help here in a little while, and then things can move along even faster. I'm gonna see if I can't actually get away with taking the intake off with the injectors in, so I don't have to completely take all this apart. Well, actually looking at it again, I might have to, because the coils are underneath the underneath the fuel rails anyway. So we'll see what goes on there. EGR comes up and over the intake, we'll have to deal with that. Still have fluids to deal with in the coolant hoses and a few lines like I mentioned earlier. But we're making good progress. All right, so it's the end of day one here. Got pretty much everything disconnected from the engine. I've got the exhaust is off. I've got the engine mounts unbolted. Got all the lines and harness disconnected from the chassis itself. The only thing left, I think, is to unbolt the transmission mounts, and Cedric came by to help. And I think just another couple small things, radiator stuff, and then it should be ready to pull. I'm out of town the next day, and have work and stuff, so I'm hoping over the next few days can make it happen. But so I'll see you in a day or so, and then maybe we could finish it. All right, so welcome to day 3. Day 2 kind of went by a little quick. I didn't have any time to film anything, but we're here again, and got pretty much everything disconnected, labeled as needed, mounts undone, accessories undone, fluids drained, and we're pretty much ready to pull it. I do have the fuel line to disconnect, and the hood to take off. We'll see if I can do that myself here. Gotta be careful when doing this kind of stuff by yourself, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Ta-da! That was actually easier than I thought. It's not always an amazing idea to try to do stuff like this yourself, but in the case of this car, the hood actually isn't all that heavy versus older cars. They are very thick gauge steel. They have heavy springs on them that you gotta watch. I could not do this by myself on the Nova. This car happens to just be within the realm of my ability by myself. So, now time to see if I can lift it after I disconnect the fuel line, of course. All right, so far we're doing pretty good. We're clearing everything fairly well. I do need to double check that the transmission harness, here we go, is all free and clear, and there is one more connection that I will have to disconnect down right there somewhere, right there, right in the middle. All right, so got the engine out. Was a little bit busy there, so I couldn't really show much, but not too bad. Unfortunately, I did forget to wrap up the transmission tail shaft. On certain transmissions, this one included, if you tip the transmission sideways, all the fluid comes out. So, gonna clean that up. Not happy about that. I should have remembered. That was my mistake. So, got the engine out with the transmission attached. Well, first I'm gonna clean that up, and then I'm gonna start, swapping stuff, cleaning stuff up, and putting it on this new block right here. I got this engine from Powertrain Products. There was a little bit of confusion when I was ordering it, but it actually ended up getting here a day earlier than I had originally even thought it would come in. Even though my order confirmation was delayed by a few days, it actually got here the day before I thought it would originally get here when I first tried to order it. So pretty happy about that, actually. It saved me a few days I didn't think I would get. And I do have to hurry because my roommate has a couple cars that he's going to be putting in here. One of them runs on that. And maybe in a future video I can show you guys that. I'll give you a hint, they're both Fords as well. So I think, yeah, so I'm going to probably end the video here. A lot of work just getting to that point. And probably do a part 2 about swapping the stuff over, cleaning up stuff, prepping things for putting an engine back in. I have heard that the best way to go about that is to actually split the transmission and engine up and put them in individually. So hopefully I'll have some help with that, and we'll be good to go. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching again. I'm rambling, I'm tired, very dirty. See you in the next one.